And okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Danielle, would you call roll, please?
Chair Cochran,
I am here.
Co-Chair Craig,
Present.
Commissioner Rule notified us that he would be absent tonight. Commissioner Bartholomew,
Here.
Commissioner Swanson,
Here.
Commissioner Pestinger, Commissioner Bush.
Here.
Roll is complete. We have a quorum.
Commissioner Rule called in. I will entertain a motion.
Commissioner Craig, I move we excuse Commissioner Rule from this meeting. Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So carried. Okay, let's see, moving right along here. Add the agenda. Is there anything, a topic that needs to be amended or something added or removed?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Craig, I move adoption of the agenda as printed.
Erica, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So carried. Public comments. Comments may be sent to the Planning Commission Secretary Danielle Chachenko at clerk@cityofording.org by 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting and will be read into the record at the meeting. In the case of a question, the chair will refer the matter to the appropriate administrative staff member. Comments that come in after the deadline will be read into the record for the next Planning Commission meeting. Moving on along to the minutes. Everyone had a chance to read them and review them. Is there any comments or edits?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Craig, under 6D, sign code violations, we did briefly talk about the Los Pinos lights, and I don't see that reference there.
Under 6.
Old business, D, sign code violations.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
We talked about the Los Pinos lights and
okay, what would you like to add there?
just add that to the list of things we talked about.
Okay,
I'll get that updated.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Craig, I don't hear anybody else speaking up with anything. I move adoption or approval of the minutes as amended. Seconded.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So carried. Moving right along here, ADR 2025-03. Daisy's Boutique Signage. Danielle, would you present the staff report, please?
Yes, so this is for a business located at 103 Corin Avenue Northwest. The applicant is proposing an existing permanent sign for a new business within an existing building located in the mixed-use town center. The applicant submitted a wall sign design with their application. The design's attached. Sign dimensions are 40 inches by 192 inches, totaling 53 square feet. Building frontage is approximately 20 foot by 58 foot, equaling 1,160 square feet. Dimensions are within the 10% allowed per OMC. The sign will be constructed of alu panel, recovering the existing alu panel sign. The sign is a company logo using yellow for the background, black for the 26-inch lettering with white accent designs. The sign text will use 26 inches by 139 inches of the sign using fonts Great Vibes Regular and Avenir Book. The applicant has indicated Business Solutions Center as a sign builder and installer. Staff recommends approval of ADR 2025-03 as presented.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Is the color one of our approved colors? Seems awful bright, but
They said it was a logo. So once it's a logo color, you know, that's her logo, then we don't usually say anything about that. I
I
doubt that's, I doubt that's.
I saw that's her logo, but my question is this a new business and her adopted logo, is it an existing logo of something that she's been using for a long time, or is this a new business and this is her new logo? And therefore she's saying, this is my logo, therefore I get to use it
Well,
because
I don't know. I couldn't answer. There's no one here to answer for them.
I can speak very generally, briefly to that. She does have, we've got business cards from her that look exactly, she basically took her business card to Business Solutions and said, can you put this on, in a sign template and blow it up in size? So she at least has the consistency in that regard.
I think that's a
And-
backdoor hole through the sign code.
Well,
From my understanding as well, it is an existing sign. The sign already exists. I think
Right.
Business Solutions is like laminating it. I don't know if that's
Oh,
the correct term.
think they wrap it.
So that was up there before, long time?
no.
Not at
no.
that business.
She's
That's a new
talking about-
location, but she's used that sign previously.
Okay.
So this is a replacement for the sign that's on the,
Yeah, she's
building
talking about
already?
Better Properties, that was their sign.
okay.
And so they're gonna rewrap the aluminum
Okay.
sign. And that's,
I did have a question, which is correct, because the staff report says the sign will use 26 by 139. Okay, never mind. The sign will use 26 by 139 of the sign, but the sign dimensions are 40 by 192. Got it.
Right, because then she's got the flowers and daisies.
Okay.
I got no objection to the sign. I just was curious if, when it says this is existing, how new is this business?
well, it doesn't even make any difference how new it is. It's her sign and that's what she wants for her business. And legally, we can't really say what she puts on her sign.
No, I don't.
And I realize the color doesn't really match, but we also, just because she's new, we can't say, sorry, we let Napa put up bright reds and blues, but we're not gonna let you put up bright yellow.
No, that's not where I was going. but
Oh,
that's
okay, I'm
fine.
sorry. That was my interpretation.
No, it's, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna start a brand new business
Mhm.
tomorrow. And I'm gonna design a logo tomorrow. And I'm gonna make some business cards and I'm gonna hand them out to advertise my business. And I'm not gonna pay any attention to what, the city sign code requirements are, but I'm gonna have, my and I'm gonna have it for 2 or 3 days before I apply for the sign permit. And I'm gonna say it's my existing sign, my existing logo, without giving it any thought. Because this could be all kinds of real interesting, and I mean, again, I don't have an objection to this one. I'm just asking for future, because is this a hole we need to close? What consists of an existing business logo? If the sign request came in a week after the business was formed,
I think we discussed this years ago when this all, we started doing this. And then when the national logos started coming in, like Napa Auto or McDonald's, we couldn't tell McDonald's to change the color of their arches. That's not
Right.
gonna go. And so then the commission at that time, we looked at it and we said, well, it's not really fair to tell Daisy that she can't have her color because we let McDonald's do their colors. And so since we let the national logos in, so we kind of made it's sort of been set a precedent. If this is your logo, this is what you've set up, then we've allowed that. And you can't change the color of your building to be bright yellow, but if your sign is that way, then, then that's,
And that's kind of where we fell into it. That's the reason we let them do, that color thing on their signs.
Because I understand if she's got another store in Sumner and that's already in play in Sumner, cool.
Then
Piece of
it's a
cake.
chain.
But if it's a brand new,
It would be nice. It would, but I don't think that we can discriminate against them because she's new. And I don't know, she might have a store in Snohomish or something. I don't know. She.
I just bringing it
Yeah.
up because
Well, I mean, and that was the discussion we had before on the whole thing with the sign colors. Cause originally we were able to, control that. I don't know if any of you ever saw the Bank of Sumner sign that was on the original building. Bank of Sumner was, where John L. Scott is now.
Mhm.
Okay, and but Bank of Sumner is one that built, they didn't build the building, they completely remodeled it and and their sign was nothing like the one for Sumner. They made a special sign just to fit our code and it was really awesome. And originally we tried to get them to change, but once we started getting more national logos coming in, we had more and more trouble with corporates and stuff saying, wait a minute, everybody recognizes that Napa sign and those colors and we need it to be there.
totally
And,
understand
yeah,
that part.
but
I
mean,
just
it
just
would be
was
nice
curious
if they could
because
Be nice.
I know we have shades of yellow in our
Yeah.
color palette.
Yep.
And if this is a one-off business, if she changed the yellow slightly for, to match the sign code, it,
Yeah, that would be nice. It would.
but
Do we even have colors in the sign code? I know we.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, we have,
Colors.
oh, yeah.
Mostly more muteds and stuff, not the brights. But I mean, you look at like that, the one we just recently did, well, it's been months now, but the pet grooming place.
Yeah.
Didn't she have like bright pink and stuff on her sign? I mean, so I understand where you're coming from and I really wish that they would. And it was like I said, Bank of Sumner came in with a beautiful sign. It's one of the prettiest signs I've ever seen. That and the one we used to have for Logan Lumber, which is where Arrow is now. And Logan's sign was gorgeous. And, but they spent a lot of money on the signs and now you're seeing people who, this is just a rack.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we've come away from a lot of stuff. I'm kind of curious, though, she says that there's already lighting on the building, but I don't have any lighting on my previous people that have been in that slot. I don't have any lighting. So where's the lighting, she says, that's already there?
Oh,
Did you go take a look at it, Tom?
yeah, I got kind of a street view. Really isn't any. If this is, I'm on the assumption that it's the better properties behind Arrow,
Yes, that's where it is.
right?
Where's the lighting?
Yeah,
I don't see any lighting.
I don't think there's,
I don't know if she indicated lighting.
I thought it was.
I don't see her mentioning lighting.
I thought,
no,
wait a minute, I thought she said that, and I'm
It's
looking,
the-
thinking, I don't recall lighting being there. Where did I
Yeah.
put that?
Wall sign, sign already in use. Yes, yes, yes. I don't see any mention of lighting.
nope.
Maybe I just made that up, sorry.
You just made that up.
Never checking it.
So all that reading I had to do, I got confused. I could have sworn that she said there was light, the lighting was already there.
No, there's not a mention of
Maybe,
lighting
yeah,
anywhere.
maybe it was existing
Mm-mm.
sign and I just
Yeah.
flew over that. Okay,
Yep.
no problem. Well, I mean, I kept thinking, where'd the lighting come from? Of course, Better Homes never did what we asked either, so.
No. But maybe the wrap
I
would be
wonder-
going off the windows.
Yeah. I was curious, that really cute little sign that Better Homes put in there, the little perpendicular sign that hung out on the sidewalk. I was curious if she was gonna put something there, 'cause that would be kind of nice, look. Cause I actually looked for this. When I came down Corn, and since I didn't have the number in my head, I wasn't sure where it was. As I'm driving down the street, I did not see it. I don't know. if she-
I drove right past it.
Yeah,
too.
I didn't know she was there. Is she already in the building? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even see it. But yeah, that cute little sign, maybe Better Homes took their bracket.
Yeah, could be.
Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Craig, I move approval of Daisy's Boutique ADR 2025-03 signage application.
Commissioner Bush, second.
All those in favor?
I,
Those opposed? So carried.
Good. Now that, yeah.
Oh, now we get to do a public hearing with
Mhm.
all our public.
Hello, everybody.
Rowdy crowd.
I'm sorry, Kim, but I think your, critical land use thing was a snore fest. Nobody wanted.
Hey, so were they,
They just weren't interested. Okay. I am now, what time is it? At 7:15, I will open the public hearing for critical areas ordinance update. And let's see, I'm not gonna tell you what the rules are. You guys know, nobody's gonna say anything anyway. Just pretend I said all that. Kim, you wanna run us through this real quick for the review?
Absolutely. Of course I will.
You know this better than anybody.
I have to administer it. Okay, good evening. Thank you very much, Commission. We are here at the public hearing for the city's proposed updates to our critical areas ordinance. This is a requirement by RCW for the city to comply with the Growth Management Act. It is a component of the comprehensive plan. Essentially, what the state allowed for is for you to work on is for cities to be able to complete all sections of the comprehensive plan other than their critical areas ordinance, which could be tabled for 12 months without cities being considered out of compliance. And so we have until December of this year to be able to come into compliance and update our critical areas ordinance. We're aiming to be a bit early on that because we know that it's our practice here that Q4 gets pretty bogged down with budget and other kind of denser legislative items that we don't want to be in conflict with this legislative action. So we tried to just stay ahead of that. We need to comply with the GMA. We also just recognize in the administration of our critical areas ordinance that there are a lot of redundancies. There's a lot of need for additional clarity. There's absence of a lot of industry best practices that I've discussed with this commission and a number of other kind of workshop meetings leading up to this public hearing, like no net loss and best available science and mitigation sequencing that are required by law to be in our critical areas ordinance and are also just best practice for us to be able to ensure that there is a successful harmony between our natural and our built environment. And so the effort that staff has undertaken to make these edits aims to be able to kind of satisfy each of those requirements. We'll go into a little bit more depth on each of those. So let's talk about the regulatory compliance perspective of the project. The RCW governs that we have to protect critical areas. We do have protected critical areas here in town. Of course, there's our rivers. We also fall into a lahar and seismic hazard area. We have critical aquifer recharge areas. And so those areas are all things that are protected by Title 11 in our code. And so the legislature said you need to make sure that those are up to date with the most recently adopted or revised legislation, and also governed the Department of Commerce to provide implementation requirements and give some sort of guidance to cities that that allows for them to ensure that they're successful in implementing all that's required by the state in the critical areas ordinance update. If you were a recipient of a PUG grant, that's a periodic update grant, which the city was, you're required to fill out this checklist that's shown here on this page. It's many pages long, and it basically is the Department of Commerce compiling all statutory requirements for critical areas ordinance into one document and saying, do you have this? Yes or no? If no, you need to add it. If yes, then good on you. Good job. Keep on keeping on. And to otherwise then point to where in your critical areas ordinance, all of the statutorily required items are to make it easy for Commerce to be able to review. Commerce has seen this. We didn't get any comments from the Department of Commerce on the effort that we've worked on. So that's good.
That is good.
And so moving along, that kind of touches on, why we have to do this from a state mandate perspective, but there's other reasons that this project is good and necessary. It's that, we really have a need to be able to codify some best practice in our code. Like we were talking about, excuse me, earlier, no net loss, mitigation sequencing, and best available science. These are common required components of all critical areas ordinances. We do not discuss those in much depth at all in our current critical areas ordinance. That really needs to be beefed up. You can see here, I've just given a little snip of a critical area report that was submitted for Rainier Meadows 2, and they do a really good job of moving through mitigation sequencing and showing, well, we're not able to avoid impacts at all because of the proliferation of the critical area, but we are able to minimize it by doing wetland buffer averaging. And so they speak to what they need to speak to, but it likely took them quite a bit of back and forth between the city's hired biologist and the applicant, because there just isn't good direction in the code right now to be able to tell the applicant, this is what we expect of you. So we want to be able to give that expectation to the applicant so they can get it right the first time instead of going through round after round after round of iterative, revision process with the city. Importantly, we've revised our critical areas ordinance to be able to rely on a pretty broad analysis of what gets to constitute best available science. And this right here is, I apologize that the size of it's a bit small. I can probably make it a bit bigger for the screen purposes here. But this is what's captured in the Washington Administrative Code for kind of examples of what sources can be referenced for best available science. And you'll see that the list is really inclusive and broad, and that serves to the benefit of cities and to applicants, because it allows for applicants to be able to kind of make creative use of the resources that are at their disposal or the talents on their team that are able to justify that they are resourcing or referencing best available science. Maybe for them, it's based off of inventory or research, or maybe it's based off of an expert opinion, qualitative analysis, and they're able to kind of work within the broader framework to be able to make that case rather than being kind of pigeonholed into a limited expectation that has, limited, technical prowess to be able to kind of inform their project. So we've captured, oops, I went way back. No, I went way forward. So we've captured this in our code to be able to say, we want to be able to have this kind of depth of available resources at disposal to be able to inform what best available science is. Just a real life application of how this worked on a project of mine from before. What you're looking at right here is the Seven Seas in Gig Harbor. This is an aerial view of it. You can see, my arrow's a little slow here, but the Seven Seas is this building right here, plus the marina with these 4 moored boats right here. And then what you'll see kind of southeast of the Gig Harbor Seven Seas is a lot of residential shoreline property owners right here. These 2 properties right here jointly owned this joint use dock, which was also a project that I permitted. And so when it was time for Seven Seas to go forward for their project, there was some real dismay and angst by a lot of the residences. And when it came time to take Seven Seas for their public hearing to the hearing examiner, many of the neighbors showed up with counsel in hand to be able to oppose the project. And in part of their opposition was I guess an idea on behalf of the residences that the new marina at the Seven Seas was being developed over a bed of eelgrass. And that, there wasn't a sufficient mitigation to be able to offset those impacts. And the reason that they felt that way was because when they built their joint use dock that I also permitted, they had to make some modifications to the design of their dock and kind of make this ramp a bit narrower, because they do have an eelgrass bed about right here on their project. And so they thought that would kind of carry over and also impact this. And so they thought it would be a way to, oppose the project successfully. However, the applicant had done their due diligence and certainly prepared a wealth of best available science that was able to show that, in fact, eelgrass was not something that was subject to any sort of, destruction or interference by their proposed project. They certainly provided us, this is an image, I'm sorry. There we go. This is an image on the right of their critical areas and shoreline report that speaks to adopted studies from experts in the field about depths of eelgrass and what depth boat scour can like have an impact on eelgrass. And so they were able to provide all of that depth of knowledge and information and science to be able to show that it's generally understood that boat scour, if it's going to occur, is going to occur within 7 feet or less. And any eelgrass that was surveyed in this area by divers was all about 10 feet or deeper. And so then they actually spoke to the fact that there was no opportunity for the boat to be able to scour. And in fact, that, motor activity at within certain proximity to eelgrass actually has benthic benefits to eelgrass to be able to keep all the material moving and kind of keep it a bit more of a biodiverse environment. So all of this is just to showcase that having the ability to really broadly source what best available science looks like, it does well for the city, but it really does well for the applicant as well, for them to be able to make a case in favor of their use of their property. Moving on, we certainly had a lot of redundancies that needed to be removed, and we had a lot of clarity that needed to be added. And so this is just a slide with a few snippets that shows a little bit of that effort. We discussed transfer of development rights twice in the same code. It was literally duplicative code. We just decided instead to delete it and reference back to it. We talked about that one. Excuse me. Facultative wetland plants. That's not a term that's otherwise used in the critical areas ordinance. Also, I have a master's degree in environmental studies, and I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've never heard that term. So it just seems like it maybe doesn't need to be here. Let's see what else. We added in a little bit of important context to be able to add clarity about when something applies and when something doesn't. Fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas, we added specificity that irrigation ditches don't count. You don't get to regulate an artificial irrigation ditch as some sort of natural critical area. It's not. It's much like a stormwater pond in that regard. And then we added a lot more content and understanding around what it is that we expect in a critical area report and a mitigation report when we talk about things like, compensatory mitigation and, what are your monitoring and contingency plan going to look like. We added a lot of context around what that is so applicants can be successful the first time. And like all legislative action, we have administrative obligations. We have to move through SEPA. The responsible official issued a determination of non-significance. There were no comments and no appeals to that determination. We did notice the notice of intent to the Department of Commerce, who then subsequently shares our project with other state agencies. We did receive feedback from 3 agencies on that. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then we also, of course, noticed this public hearing. We did not receive any comments or appeals to the notice of public hearing. The feedback that we received from agencies was largely helpful. The Department of Natural Resources, I've captured what their content was here and then what my prepared response was to a lot of their comments. Pretty helpful. They had some just suggestions for things that we could change maybe to our website to, link users and developers in the city to other, DNR resources to be able to look at things like geologic hazards that might be in the area. So helpful things like that, helpful, references and, some considerations for a couple of years from now when we have to open up the Shoreline Master Program, what we might think about there. So good feedback from them. Nothing troublesome.
With DNR.
Yeah.
The 1, 2, 3, third block down, ordering response.
Mhm.
I don't know that it makes a difference because I think this is probably just an example for us, but there is a typo. We try to keep out web page updated, should be our web page updated.
Okay.
Well, I didn't know if this document was going anywhere but to us, and
It's a part of the record, so it'd be a bit malicious to try and change it. But thank you.
yeah.
Move forward to the feedback from Ecology. Ecology really had some good, helpful feedback. This is really their bread and butter, and so they had some good back and forth with them. They let us know that there was, one item within the there's a standard for how it is that habitat scores are rated for wetlands. Ours was off by 1 integer in our table that needed to be updated with newer developed science. And so that was helpful feedback from them. And then otherwise, they basically pointed out the highlights here are them pointing out, you guys need to add a lot more content about what your critical area studies and reporting should entail, because they're like, does this live somewhere else in your code or what's up? So we got the feedback. It was good. It was helpful. And I agreed with their findings. Department of Fish and Wildlife, less so, less helpful. Some helpful, but some pretty unhelpful. They had some helpful suggestions for definitions to be added that are used in our critical areas ordinance that should be defined. They also had suggestions for us to define terms that are otherwise governed by our floodplain ordinance, and that's Title 14. I don't support that kind of idea. It adds a lot of confusion to talk about things like channel migration zones in the critical areas ordinance when it's otherwise regulated by Title 14. It's just sends people back and forth needlessly. And so I didn't accept those. I should also mention, also, these are suggestions that are made by state agencies. If they're not suggestions that are rooted in state law, we do not have to accept their suggestions. The most particularly troublesome suggestion that they made was that we should revise our buffers for the Carbon and Puyallup River to refer to the 200-year-old site potential tree tool. Department of Fish and Wildlife has created a new tool that attempts to predict what the height of a tree when it was 200 years old would be in various locations throughout the city. You can see on this slide a couple of snips that I took of the tool being used. In some areas, they predict that a Doug fir would have been there, and that it would be 220, that we should apply a buffer of 225 feet based off of its 200-year predicted height. In other areas, you can see they predict a red alder would have been there, and that buffer should be 105 feet. We're not doing that. And I listed quite a number of reasons in my response to WDFW for that. Our only regulated waters that are within the regulatory reach of the Department of Fish and Wildlife are the Carbon and the Puyallup rivers. We assign a standard 150-foot buffer in our critical areas ordinance for those regulated features. They're not that I've seen.
Just trying to justify their job, because that's insane.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe it's new and other people will, but I don't support it here.
You make it any more confusing.
It is really confusing. And I think more to the point from a state agency perspective, there has been a wealth of legislation that has come down. There is a theme in the Washington State legislature for a few years now, and the theme is cities need to make development, particularly development of housing, more predictable and more expedited. And this sort of thing really works against that. It does not do anything to be able to make development predictable. It also will have a tendency. I'm going to forecast the future here. It's going to lead for people to move away from areas where they would develop on developable land and ording that has 225-foot buffers if they otherwise could just, kind of go somewhere with a 105-foot buffer. It's going to add confusion. It's going to create distaste in developing otherwise developable land if there are larger buffers than other areas. And I describe all that in these comments back to the Department of Fish and Wildlife when I explained to them that we're not doing it. And so with that, with the adoption of or the acceptance of helpful feedback from agencies, other public agencies, and the thoughtful efforts of our work on this with Planning Commission, staff recommends that Planning Commission recommend the City Council adopt Ordinance 2025-1143, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Commissioner, any questions?
One comment, if you need more backup in this keeping the 150-foot buffer instead of the 225. Just attended a lecture last month from OSU they've got a unit that does tree ring mapping and fires and impacts on trees and so forth, and 225 is way beyond what OSU is submitting for consideration. So
I appreciate it.
They're trying to justify,
yeah, exactly.
because that's insanity. Any other comments?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Craig, I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council that they adopt the CAO amendments as they are presented in the draft ordinance 2025-1143.
Commissioner Swanson, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So carried. And I think I was supposed to close the public meeting, so just close it 2 minutes before now.
Thank you.
We closed it at 7:33. That's what I like about planning commission. We're not planning, so a little more informal here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Moving right along, people, we're getting this done. Old business. AB 25-20 ordering municipal code update.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. This is my next item will be a presentation of chapters 1 through 7 of Title 15. As this commission is well aware, we are working to be able to capture some really overdue title amendments that are needed in the municipal code. And that includes titles 110. We're already doing 11 with the critical areas ordinance, and then 12, 13, and 15. And so we have left in front of us the need to review titles 15 and 13. And because these are heftier titles, we've broken that down into 2 meeting segments. And so tonight we'll only be reviewing chapters 1 through 7 of Title 15. Title 15 is our administration code. It governs the roles and responsibilities of our governing bodies and the administrative level of the government, to some extent our hearing examiner, and it moves through some of our more administrative sort of proceedings. The one thing that I'll note about the changes that you see tonight, that the edits that are in front of you tonight, is that there are 2 things that we're really still workshopping a little bit. One is appeals. There's a lot of discussion of appeals. And we're still working with our city attorney to be able to kind of correct a lot of the content there. And then also chapter 6 governs impact fees. And we're still working on some edits with that with our city engineer to make sure that we're collecting the right amount of impact fees to be able to ensure from developers to be able to ensure that their development pays its fair share towards the maintenance of our existing infrastructure. And also removing things that the city has no part in. You'll see in the edits that we've removed everything that discusses school impact fees. We don't set school impact fees, the county does. And so instead of trying to, duplicate what their code says impact fees are for schools, we just refer everybody to what that is. It changes routinely enough. So we just refer everybody to the Pierce County code that governs that anyways. Otherwise, the content in front of you is what we're proposing right now for edits made to chapters 1 through 7 of Title 15. I think that there are some particular, what I would imagine would be of particular interest to the Planning Commission. So I'll just go ahead and point those out, and then we can open it up to the Planning Commission for more pointed questions. If we are looking at page 140 of your packet, Section 1534 governs the powers of the Planning Commission. We've prepared a couple of edits right there to be able to carry forward a couple of other legislative requirements that you'll see later in this code. There's some specificity that the Planning Commission renders decisions on signed code variances. I removed the word hardship. There's no requirement for somebody to make a case or a showing of a hardship to be able to have a variance proposed.
Change that some, I can remember when we used to hear, before we had the hearing examiner.
Mhm.
And we also acted as the Board of Adjustment back then. Until our population got to the number that moved the hearing examiner in.
Mhm.
And when we heard a signed variance, there was 3, I can't remember all of it, but hardship was one of the things you had to have. There were 3 steps to prove why you needed a variance in your neighbor, from your
Mhm.
neighbor. Why did you get one?
Mhm.
And one of them was hardship.
Right.
I don't know why it particularly says that, but are we no longer following that criteria for picking for allowing a variance?
Well, we have that separate criteria captured in 1367 or what will be 1310 if council approves the last changes. So I'll double check myself on that. You're right that general variances usually do require that, but it's not a personal hardship. It's a hardship that usually variances are variances from the land, and there's some sort of hardship that's associated with the topographic features of the land or the size of the parcel or the shape of it. But with a sign code, there's no opportunity to make a case for some sort of personal hardship, like your socioeconomic status or something like that. And so it's a bit misleading. So we've recommended for that, but I'll double check myself on that. I'll take a note to just make sure that there isn't something that I'm missing on that.
It's a personal thing. It was strictly, it had to do with the structure of the property, it didn't land, just like you explained.
Mhm.
That's exactly what the hardship was. Your corner lot came to a point where you needed your sign or whatever.
Mm.
So we allowed things that was the kind of hardship we were looking at.
Well, I'll certainly double check that.
you.
Yeah, of course. The other edits that you see being recommended here in this section is removing it did not empower you to make major amendments to PUDs. You do have that power, so that part's been added in. And then I also had to remove references to plat vacations and alterations. You'll see in a couple of sheets that by state law in 5817, that has to be a legislative action. So that has to be a council decision. And so right now it's illegal and we have to change it. And then moving forward, I thought that another couple of things that would be of interest if you move forward to page 144. We look at pages about 144 through 146. There will be a couple of edits there that are relevant to the Planning Commission that you might be interested in. So if we're looking at 144, you'll see that I've just added in type 3As. The final decision is made by Planning Commission. I've added that there will be a recommendation that's prepared by the administrator or me. It's, I think, wrong to say that you could expect to be able to see one of those come in front of you without the staff having presented a recommendation. And so made that change. And then if you jump forward another 2 pages to the next table, that's what,
The page 146 and under the type 1 administrator, on the second page there, it's where it says minor amendments to site plans, final plats, mobile manufactured home parks.
Mhm.
Okay. I thought we don't allow mobile homes in the city, and I don't think we have a definition for mobile homes. Manufactured, yes, but not mobile. And most people, when you say mobile, they immediately assume, your old, trailer where the drug people live. So
a couple months ago, we just clarified manufactured home.
well, I thought we had done that in the past. And that when I saw that word mobile, I thought, wait a minute, I don't know that should be there. Cause I'm almost positive we no longer allow any kind of mobile home in the city limits.
I'll double check that. And if we don't, then I'll remove it from this portion. And this was actually the table that I was moving us forward to. So I'll just describe some of these that I think are.
That's was in there before.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it might be old language that should have been deleted before.
Exactly. You're right. Yeah. So I'll definitely take a look in that. And then in the same table, if we look under a couple of these other sections, you can see again, we're under type 3A. I've taken out plat vacations and alterations as a planning commission decision and moved that into a type 4 decision because it does have to be made by council. So there's I just wanted to point that out as just a codification of the. Go ahead.
I think we talked about it before, but could you explain it again? Why was the preliminary plats removed from planning commission?
We're recommending that be made an administrative decision. And the reason why is because there has been a number of state laws that have been passed that kind of go into this thinking. One is that state law already provides that administrative level of government can approve preliminary plats. So the governance does exist for the possibility in state law. Then when you think about the applicability of a lot of the other state laws that have been recently passed, it's sensible for it to transition away from some sort of public hearing or legislative action. And the reason why is because right now it's a council action. And so what state law has done is say you need to be able to make preliminary plats faster. You need to be able to move through them faster than you've been doing before. Well, that's really hard to do in Ording because when it's a council decision, because we have to prepare staff's analysis of the project itself, and then we have to notice a public hearing in front of planning commission. Planning commission meets once a month, so we wait for that one time a month. We hope we get through in one meeting. We get through that meeting, then we have to separately have a public hearing in front of city council. Then we have to notice that. That takes another few weeks. Then we have to go in front of council, have a public hearing there, hopefully get through that in one time. It's a much longer process and is averse to what we've otherwise been told by the state that we have to be able to accommodate, which is a more expedited process. Another part of the problem is that by requiring a public hearing, it gives the public this idea that they get to inject some sort of subjectivity, or tell the council or the planning commission that there's an opportunity to inject subjectivity into an otherwise objective process. What the state law says is that a city is required to approve a preliminary plat as long as it is consistent with all adopted local ordinances and development regulations. That is well within the capacity of a successful city staff. We do it every single day with all varieties of permit applications. There isn't an opportunity any longer in state law to say, we wish that were a bit different. Can you change that? That sort of thing does exist with PUDs, planned unit developments, like Rainier Meadows, where we really got to kind of haggle with them and say, okay, we'll allow you guys to have really rinky dinky lots, but you guys have to build us some pickleball courts and redesign our foothills trail to match our master plan and put some walking trails that connect to the levee road along the Carbon River and things like that. There's a lot of discretion that's able to be injected into the process. So those things should remain with council and with planning commission, and should invite public testimony and things like that. But when we're just required to approve a preliminary plat if it meets all of its minimum lot standards and setbacks and dimensional requirements and public access and all of those things, there's no opportunity for somebody to show up and say, I don't like it, I wish it were different, and expect there to be an actual result that yields from that participation.
Is there no chance for public input at all then on a preliminary plat?
There is. We have rewritten Title 15 to create right now, if you look at, if we go back to page 144, right now, if you look at type 1 and type 2, as it's written right now, there's no discernment between those two administrative processes. They're both administrative processes, but each one of them doesn't have a recommendation, doesn't require a notice of application, has the same appeal rights. There's no difference. So there's no reason that we have to. So we've rewritten type 2 to require a notice of application. And so that's that change that you see there in that column. Preliminary plats, we've rewritten as a recommended type 2 process. So what that would do would be, if anybody applies for a preliminary plat, the city would be required to notice the application for preliminary plat to the general public in our newspaper, in City Hall here, with a notice board on site, and to all property owners within 300 feet of the site.
But there would not be any kind of a public hearing where people in that neighborhood could say something about the preliminary.
No, they could submit written comment in response to the notice of application, and everybody still maintains their right to judicial appeal. If they felt they had a strong enough case, they could certainly appeal it. But otherwise there would not be a public hearing opportunity that's created through these changes.
Wow. It's just, like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and we've had lots of very contentious preliminary hearings. And
most of the time, what we noticed is that the citizens of this community just want to be heard. They want you to hear what they have to say, and hopefully we'll take, some of them say we never do anything, but I said, I always point to the fact, you look at that highway, Ording is great. We required those developers to put in ingress and egress line, channels. The county in this is the one that didn't do anything. The state didn't do anything. That's why when you're going to High Cedars, if you're turning left, you back up the traffic all the way to the school, because they didn't require them to do anything. The city was responsible for all those channels for White Hawk and Village Green and both the entrances and stuff. We made them do that, made the developers do that. And part of it was because the community came forward and said, the traffic is horrible already. How, this is going to be awful. How are we going to deal with all this?
Right.
And so they, we heard them and we listened and we did, the best that we could do to, the plat's going through. How can we mitigate it to make it, acceptable to the people who are already here?
Right. Yeah.
And, for them not to get that voice is disturbing to me.
Well, a couple things to that. The state law that governs that city's administrative officials can can approve preliminary plats does say that the notice of application that goes out, it needs to say that if anybody in the public specifically requests a public hearing, it will happen. So that is a component of it. It's just, it's not a built-in, it's not a built-in component any longer the way that it is now. But if somebody feels compelled enough to be able to say, I want to have a public hearing on this, that right is afforded to them and we will have one.
Oh,
So
okay.
that information will be included in the notice of application that goes out as well. So it's not like we're not going to tell you about this opportunity thing. It'll be right there in front of them on the notice. So that opportunity does exist. And then there's always the opportunity as well, like I said, for preliminary plat, excuse me, would be approved administratively after review from the city engineer, the community development director. The city engineer is within his right to be able to, and needs to review the impacts of the project and then require a sufficient amount of mitigation to be able to avoid impacts. That's well within his rights still. And so, the need for appropriate access, ingress, egress, utility connections and sizing, that is, certainly well within his capacity and his expectation to be able to require and dedicate to the city.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes though, if it's left up to one person or two people, they don't see all the different, I mean, that's the point of, that's what I like about this commission. It's a brainstorming part. We talk about stuff and bring in, from all different parts of life. We all have different, lives that we've led. And so, we have a different perspective on things, and it takes a group of people to do that. Not one person, you're seeing it from your one side. And I'm disappointed in I mean, I understand it's not your fault or anybody else's. It's the legislature for the state of Washington. And, the power brokers down there, they do not represent me at all. And I don't, I just hate that that's been taken away from the public, that you don't, because that's some of the biggest meetings. We used to have them at the school gym because there'd be so many people showed up for these things because they wanted to just be heard. And we
Mhm.
tried really hard to mitigate, what we could to make them, happy about, or at least livable.
Mhm.
A lot of times you'd be amazed what that bloody 6-foot fence would do. A
Mhm.
lot of them, they were happy just so they didn't have to see it. Okay, yeah, they're going to build. And when you look down the highway, and I know I've said this before, but the city, the planning commission, we pushed them that we wanted those berms on each side and the fences up top, not only for, just to beautify the city. So you're not coming in and looking at everybody's backyard, because that's our view, to come into town. But also, so then these people that own these homes have privacy.
Right.
Who wants to be on the back of a highway?
Right.
And so, but it just, I don't like the fact not allowing the public to have their say. And preliminary plats have always been a big contentious thing in town, but we don't have a lot of space left. So I guess, it's not really,
That's true.
Like on air, unless we can't annex more land.
yeah. And growth management's not going to let us do that. So what the heck?
Yeah.
I'll stop. Thank you.
Sure. Those are the only things that I thought were particularly noteworthy and would likely be of interest to the planning commission. Of course, any of the rest of the content, I'm happy to be able to discuss and take any of your questions or thoughts.
I had a couple more. On page 163, where, it's table 15.6.2. And the questions were asked for the parkland. I know you said you were still working on the impact fee thing, but did you ever find out where the 15,000 per acre came from?
Not yet. I reached out to AHBL because they in 2022 prepared our PTOS, our Park Trails and Open Space Plan, and that gave more of an in-depth analysis of the costs that they work into an upgraded impact fee or an updated impact fee, because we were at that time operating off of 2003 levels, and I think we were charging developers like $800 a house or something, and they redid the analysis 20 years later, and that actually you guys should be doing close to about 1,500 per house to be able to adequately count for the impact on today's dollars and inflation. So it likely lives in there. The questions that are remnant on this page right here are indicators for me to be able to continue to workshop this with our city engineer. So we're just still kind of working on that. I'm honeymooning in a couple of weeks, starting on Friday, and our
We'll
our
let you
city
do that.
engineer just can't match my schedule. So we haven't gotten to it yet. And we won't until July. So
Yeah. I just read that and I'm thinking 15,000, are you kidding? No wonder we can't do anything. We don't have enough money to do it.
I think we have updated numbers to be able to, or at least some sort of answer to the question, but it'll just have to come later, given my recreational schedule.
That, we allow
Because
that.
if you know where that land is.
Yeah.
That's an-
Yeah.
On page 171, 15,617.
Yep.
C. The comment was made about the special population residents
Right.
and, I always thought that that had more like, to me, that says seniors or some sort of a, it wouldn't really be a, if somebody's building a house for, you know, like a group home or something for disabled people, that's not really an impact fee anyway. But these senior developments, I always thought that's what the special population would refer to. Do we not give any kind of a,
There's no definition for it, and I don't know what it's referring to.
Mm.
I mean, it's certainly, let's see, the last time that this code was touched was, well, 2024, but then before that it was 2003. So I can go back and see, you know, what, I don't think that there was probably anything. It's not a defined term, and I just don't know what group it would have been talking about in 2003. The state's also kind of given a new name to the same body
Yeah.
12 different ways. And so I just don't know who they're talking about here, but I know that today's exemptions from impact fees typically relate to socioeconomic status, those AMI ranges that we saw a lot about in the comprehensive plan update.
I'm wondering if special population residents might have been added in there because of the old soldiers' home. Because that could be considered to be the special population. Because it's a Washington State Department of Veteran Affairs. And there was a lot of discussion when they came to us about the mini home village there.
right?
And so that may be what they were talking
Yeah.
about when they had special population residents.
Well, you know, I agree. That very well might be 2003. God, I can't remember.
Let me spend a bit more time trying to be able to explore this a bit and see if I can find an answer for who.
Yeah, I
what
don't want to
was
lock
discussed.
that, and even, and like I said, senior housing, when you go into, you know, like Mountain View or, which is all seniors and, or over 55 community,
Mhm.
those kind of places. I don't know if they fit the low income thing or not when they're building that, you know, I don't know how all that particular part works,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't, you know, ask them to pay impact fees, you know, for, I guess, I don't know.
Well, and if that special population does have anything to do with the old soldiers' home, that needs
Yeah.
to stay in there.
Mhm.
So that if they choose to do anything else out there,
And they've been doing work out there.
yeah, they have.
Oh, I have a pre-app with them on Thursday to talk
really?
about, to talk about putting more units out there. So,
Yeah.
yeah, let me spend a little bit
Yeah.
of time researching a little bit further.
Good luck for
Who,
2003.
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I used to have all that old stuff, but I recycled most of it.
Uh.
So. Anyway.
Are there any other?
Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Nope. All righty. Thank you, Kim.
Whoops.
And oh, I forgot, I already turned that. Next in July, we'll be doing the rest of Title 15. You've got 2 of 2. Do you have what chapters it's gonna be?
Right, yeah, so it's Title 15, 2 of 2, and then we've got August and September will be parts 1 of 2 and 2 of 2 of Title 13. So in October, we'll be bored.
I'm sure they'll find something. That always do. All righty, dumpster violations. How's that coming?
We checked in with Arrow after the last meeting, got good, we usually get good action from them. It seems like that maybe there's just somebody just comes along every once in a while and dives back into a bad habit or something like that. But Kurt goes out there and talks with them and they move it right away. And so hopefully that's been a lot better. But otherwise nothing to report on dumpster violations. Most of code enforcement's activity right now is on things like boats and RVs.
Good. I'm glad they moved it because that's, yeah, until I pulled up that day, I was shocked. I mean, I was shocked when I saw that. Holy cow, I cannot see down that road.
Right.
And even though speed limit's only 25, some people don't do 25.
Understood.
Well, if they have dyslexia, that means the speed limit is 50.
52. Some of them, I've actually had people pass me on Calistoga
Oh my gosh.
and I'm going, I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I'm doing 25. I don't know what you want me to do. I'm not going to speed down this road. Okay, sign code.
Sign code. Let's see. We are preparing a letter to send to Cafe Elite. They've affixed a new sign. We talked about that at the last meeting. So they've affixed a new sign over here. So we're sending them a new letter. Scott and I have been working on that as a kind of what the right messaging or tone is for the letter. And so we'll send that out, hopefully this week before I leave, to Cafe Elite. And otherwise, the only sign related issue that we ran into was before Daisy's applied for the permit that they have now applied for. They had set up some sort of temporary advertisement at the corner of Calistoga and
There's 6 of them
162.
all over town.
Yeah. Well, we really saw the one at Calistoga and 162, like our busiest intersection. And I walked over and took a look at it and thought, not a chance. So I went over to the new shop and spoke with her and got her information. She reached out to Danielle right away. They had already had everything all worked up with Better Solutions, isn't it, Danielle? Business Solutions, thank you. I was combining Better Properties. They'd already had everything worked out. They just needed to submit their application, but her husband did go out there that afternoon and take that sign down. And I explained to her what the rules are. And so she was immediately compliant. It was a really, really good kind of code enforcement story there. If you haven't been by, cute little antique shop in there. So
Yeah, there was one right there by Safeway.
Mm.
And it was a cute sign, but it was like, and then there was 4 more just like that around town.
right.
And it's, yeah, okay.
Oh, I know we have, when, just, no, on Eldridge, there used to be a greenhouse and a floral shop there.
Yeah.
Been
it's
there
like
forever. Yeah, now it's, I don't know what that is now. Somebody's house, I
It's a
think.
yard sale. That's what it is. It's a constant yard sale.
Oh, the one next door.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really kind of sad. That big house, that big 4 square house, years ago when they built the greenhouse, that was the owners that lived in that house and ran the greenhouse. And then it got separated and the greenhouse people, they tried to sell the floors, but nobody wanted. Anyway, it'd been there forever. I moved here in 1980 and that greenhouse was there then. And one of the things that they had trouble with is because they weren't downtown with the major stuff, they always had a sandwich board sign down on the corner of Eldridge and Calistoga. And when we started regulating all these signs and stuff, that was one of the problems. But we just like grandfathered it in because if it's not a city street, a business street, you may not know. Now this building, it is on the, Corin, which is a major, business street.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, the the little signs can get really crazy quickly.
Mhm.
What about all the vinyl signs being hung outside of Wawa? They're hanging them on the outside of their building. There's like one between every single window on the Washington Street side.
And then Asiento's across the street with the temporary signs,
Asientos, I swear. He loves signs.
oh yeah, he does.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know if they've asked for temporary signs, if they've got permits for all that vinyl hanging out there or what.
Well,
And I do know it's
the
a
thing
new,
with Wawa's, they had them up.
yeah,
And then the city wrote them a letter and they took them down.
they're back
And now
up.
they put up new ones in the
Send
same exact
The
place.
new business owners, I think, have since put up new signs unaware.
Oh,
of
they've
it.
changed hands again?
Hoping we can utilize the sign letter that we're coming up with, to be able to reach out to them as well.
Okay.
But yeah, a few months ago, they, changed business owners.
Oh. Oh, I didn't know that. I know the prices have gotten so high, I haven't been there in a while. When it was first Wawa, I could get chicken teriyaki for $5.99.
I understand the concept.
That concept is really dead now.
Pretty much anywhere.
Anywhere, I know. I can't afford to eat out anymore. Okay, planned actions. Is anybody going to be absent for July?
I will not be here in July.
I will not be here.
Okay, Dan's out. And Jeff is out.
I could call in and go neener, neener, neener.
I may,
On the balcony on my cruise ship.
there you go.
Ah,
I can't necessarily because where we go, there is no.
no
service.
Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi, no cell service. No.
We're gonna have to make sure that Chris and Joe show up then.
Six?
After the 4th.
Yeah.
I might be tired, but I'll be here.
Okay, report from council meetings. Anything interesting they're doing?
Help me.
By that comment, you boxed her into a corner.
I know.
Let's see.
ADR guidelines.
ADR is going forward.
Yep. We're gonna be, public hearing heavy this next month. ADR guidelines, 6-year TIP, transportation improvement,
Yep.
and then, surplus vehicles at Public Works. We also approved Summerfest sponsorship,
Mm,
and that covers the main points of council during May.
So have they,
Thank you, Danielle, for rescuing me.
Anytime.
her head is still full of critical. Did they pass the tip? Or they're going to pass the
It
tip
still has its public hearing coming up.
coming
Yeah.
up? Okay. Is that gonna be in July or in June or in July?
June 11th. We
June
got
11th.
3 public hearings that night.
Okay, whoa. Okay, awesome. So next month, we are going to see the same, Ording Municipal Code Update, Title 15.
That's it.
That
ADR is done, critical areas is done.
Critical is done. Awesome. All right. Have you, have we heard anything? Is the guy that built beside the food bank? Is there any anybody moving in there?
We get some interest and some questions here and there. I think that his most recent plan is he's asked us to assign addresses for to separate the leasable space on the bottom floor into 2 commercial spaces instead of 1. I think that his challenge was likely that he couldn't find anybody that needed to afford or needed that much space or could afford all of that space. Because we had a couple women come in talking about a hair salon and, we've heard definitely people interested, but I think that it's probably just a matter of cost for that much space. And so
Right.
instead their intention is to lease 2 separate spaces there. So there's interest. And I think that after they move forward with this sort of plan to divide the space into 2, that they might get a bit more traction.
Do we have a number to have 2 different numbers on that building?
We assigned the 2 different numbers. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we do? Okay.
Yeah.
what's going on with Old City Hall?
Not sure. There's there's a separate discussion going on between Scott and the council about kind of what to do with some of our surplus material and maybe what we might want to do with some of the land and buildings that we own. But there hasn't been any sort of concrete discussion about anything for repurposing of City Hall.
And still nothing on the big open lot they cleared off down there by the school.
No. So nope, nothing on that. I know that the school will have every intention on
You're talking about the property north of the school?
South. of the school.
Oh, so now he's talking about the stuff across by the gas stations.
Yeah.
Where the houses were.
Oh,
old house.
right, yeah, Singh's property, Prince's property,
Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah. You know, we hear from him every now and again about, you know, some sort of intention for developing out there, but we haven't gotten any sort of application in yet.
Well, we got applications from Route and they never did anything anyway, so what the heck?
Yeah.
It would just be nice because it's the, you know, as you're coming into town, it would really be nice.
And Gravity was gonna reside there. So,
Right.
Oh, well. Okay. We are to number 9.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Craig, I hear nothing else on anybody's voice. So move we adjourn.
Commissioner Booth, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So carried. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim, for all your work. It's got to be mind numbing. Just, and you know, and when you come to any of the code discussions, it's just like, I'm sure, you know, you work with it all the time, and so it probably comes easier to you, but just trying to read it and stuff, I go back and I have to read it again and think, what the heck did she just say? I don't even know. So,
It gets a little easier when you're the one.
yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
going somewhere fun?
I hope so. Paris and Italy.
Oh, that's awesome.
We have a few days in Florence and then the Amalfi Coast. And then we'll fly out of Rome.
Nice.
How long?
2 weeks.
You're gonna be gone 2 weeks? Oh, that's gonna be nice.
Yeah, I agree.
Very nice.
I know my husband even got coverage at work and so he might not be believing either. Nice.
Not if you're in England, I mean, in Paris and in
He's back
Italy
away.
is just beautiful.